Good evening, sleepy scholars and curious comrades. As the day's last light softens, painting the world in muted golds and blues, and the modern world begins to hush its relentless hum, invite yourself to settle in. Perhaps with a warm drink cradled in your hands, or a favorite, soft blanket drawn around you. Here at Boring History, we often embark on grand adventures, thundering through epic battles and dissecting complex political intrigues with all the subtlety of a medieval siege engine. But tonight, our journey will be a little different. We'll simply drift back in time, allowing our minds to wander gently over the quiet, intricate, and utterly fascinating details of human lives that often go unnoticed in the grand narratives. Tonight, we explore something that, at first glance, might seem utterly mundane, a mere footnote in the annals of time: medieval hairstyles and jewelry. But I assure you, my friends, by the time we're done, you'll understand how a single braid, a particular gem, or even the subtle tilt of a hat could speak volumes. These weren't just decorative flourishes designed to catch a passing eye. They were a silent, powerful, and utterly revealing language, a secret code whispered across crowded market squares, a complex social media profile curated long before the internet, a declaration of who you were, where you stood in the grand, feudal pecking order, what you believed in, and sometimes even the deepest, darkest secrets of your very soul. So, breathe deep, let your shoulders drop, and allow your thoughts to drift, because the story of medieval aesthetics, when viewed through the right lens, is anything but boring. It's a tale woven with the very threads of class, faith, and the sheer, jaw-dropping, often hilariously impractical artistry of human hands. Imagine, if you will, a life dictated by the unforgiving rhythm of the sun and the unyielding demands of the soil. A world where every single strand of hair on your head wasn't just hair. It was a visible manifestation of your destiny, instantly scanning and broadcasting your entire life story to anyone who bothered to look. There were no online trend forecasts, no celebrity stylists, and certainly no hairspiration boards. Just the stark, often muddy, reality of your existence. At the very base of the medieval social pyramid, the hard-working, perpetually sun-drenched, and occasionally pitchfork-wielding, we had our peasants. For them, hair was, above all, practical. Think of it as the original no-fuss, no-muss look. Peasant women, often blessed with long, flowing hair that could reach their waists, meticulously braided it, usually into a single, sturdy plait, and then tucked it away, tightly secured beneath a simple head covering. This wasn't merely a matter of modesty, though piety was certainly a factor in their devoutly religious society. It was a pure, unadulterated necessity. Getting hay in your hair is one thing, a minor inconvenience. Getting your hair caught in a spinning wheel, a threshing flail, or a particularly aggressive cow's tail, however, is quite another and potentially a lot less amusing. Their head coverings, typically made of rough, undyed linen or coarse wool, were more than just protection from the elements. They were unmistakable visual cues, screaming humble, hardworking, and perhaps most importantly, under strict social and moral control. A peasant woman letting her hair flow freely in public? That was practically a medieval flashing neon sign saying, "I'm a loose woman, a witch, or just really bad at following the rules and possibly inviting unwanted attention from the local inquisition." And for the men, their hair was usually kept short and neat, or at a practical length that wouldn't interfere with swinging a scythe, hammering hot iron in the village smithy, or, surviving another winter. They were the original minimalist style icons, not by choice, but by endless hours of backbreaking labor. Their entire aesthetic was, "I woke up like this, now hand me that shovel, there's barley to be harvested." Simple, practical, and perfectly acceptable in its own way. But as the medieval world, ever so slowly, began its fascinating, often chaotic evolution, so too did its social landscape. Towns grew, bustling with newfound commerce, and new opportunities arose, giving birth to a burgeoning middle class, the merchants and artisans. These folks weren't quite rubbing elbows with dukes and duchesses yet. Their social climbing was still in its early stages, but they certainly weren't slaving away in the mud anymore. And their upward mobility was subtly, yet distinctly reflected in their wardrobes and, yes, even their hairstyles. While practicality still reigns supreme, you can't exactly negotiate a silk deal while tripping over a ball gown. Their fabrics were finer, their clothes perhaps a tad more tailored, sometimes even sporting a splash of vibrant color that the peasants could only dream of. Imagine a bright red tunic in a sea of dull browns. A true status symbol. The women still kept their hair covered, a nod to societal expectations and proper decorum, but their veils might be made of softer, even subtly patterned linen, perhaps adorned with delicate embroidery that hinted at their growing status and taste. Picture a baker's wife, her veil meticulously pinned, subtly but firmly judging the rough, unadorned kerchief of a passing farmer. For the men, hair could be a bit longer, more carefully styled, perhaps a neat bob or even a slightly curled look, and a carefully trimmed beard might make an appearance, a clear sign of their prosperity and respectability. It was about showing you had a little coin jingling in your purse, a little time for personal grooming beyond a quick morning splash, and definitely didn't smell like a barn anymore. Progress, my friends, slow and steady, glorious progress. They were subtly announcing, we're moving on up, so don't be surprised if we buy your lord's favorite tavern next year. Now, for the main event, let's ascend to the very pinnacle of medieval society, where fashion wasn't just a statement. It was a weapon, a carefully crafted declaration of dominance, and often a logistical nightmare. We're talking about the nobility and royalty. Here, hair wasn't just a part of you. It was an architectural marvel, a towering, gravity-defying testament to absolute power and ludicrous wealth. In the High Middle Ages, roughly 11th to 13th centuries, noble women wore their long hair meticulously braided and often concealed within elaborate snoods. These weren't your grandma's hairnets. We're talking about intricate creations woven from fine silk threads, sometimes even gold wire, and adorned with precious pearls. While they still maintained a demure, covered appearance, the sheer opulence and painstaking craftsmanship of these pieces screamed, I own this castle, and probably your entire village if I felt like it. So please, adjust your gaze accordingly. But then, the late 14th and 15th centuries rolled around, and with them, an era of fashion so outrageously over the top, it practically begs to be mocked by future historians like us. This was the glorious, slightly deranged age of the hennin. Picture this. A towering, cone-shaped hat, sometimes soaring to an incredible 3 feet high, that's like a small, well-dressed child or a very determined dog perched on your head, draped in the most luxurious silks and velvets, often topped with a long, flowing sheer veil that billowed elegantly behind them. It was less a hat and more a personal monument to excessive spending. To accommodate these majestic monstrosities, women would often shave or pluck their foreheads and even their eyebrows, creating a high, domed forehead that was considered a mark of beauty and intellect, or perhaps just a lot of free time and a high tolerance for repetitive plucking. The rest of their hair was then completely hidden, tucked away and molded into the cone. This wasn't about natural beauty. It was about sheer, unadulterated ostentation, literally elevating their social status. It shrieked, I am so incredibly wealthy. I can afford to wear something utterly impractical that actively hinders my daily life, just to show off to all you lesser mortals, and imagine the sheer, unadulterated chaos of daily life in a hennin. You couldn't just casually stroll through a doorway. You had to execute a precise, often humiliating medieval duck and tuck, careful not to scrape your expensive headwear or, worse, dislodge your carefully crafted persona. Open flames? Forget about it, one wrong move and you'd be a human torch, albeit a very stylish one. Walking through a crowded market? You probably needed a personal herald to yell, make way for the lady's hat, lest you be impaled by its glorious height and face a most embarrassing lawsuit. Their lives, quite literally, revolve around this absurd headpiece. It was a physical burden, a daily sacrifice for their elevated status, a constant reminder of their social weight. But oh, what a statement it made about their family's immense power and their access to the finest silks and jewels. The noblemen, not to be outdone by their wives' gravity-defying headwear, though they rarely reached the same heights of sartorial absurdity, also evolved their hair trends. In earlier periods, long, flowing locks cascading to the shoulders were common, often paired with a distinguished beard, a symbol of wisdom and masculinity. As the centuries progressed, especially after the rather inconvenient interruption of the Black Death, which oddly enough, seemed to trigger a collective wewello attitude towards fashion and a desire to live it up while you still could, because, plague. Men's styles became shorter and more manicured. Hats, too, became quite the statement, from the surprisingly versatile chaperone, a kind of fabric hood-meets turban that could be worn in multiple ways like a medieval Swiss army knife of headwear, to more elaborate, sometimes feathered creations. A well-groomed beard, a stylish hat that probably cost more than a small farm, and perhaps a casually, yet expensively, adorned dagger tucked into their belt were all essential accessories for a nobleman trying to win favor at court or dominate a joust. No messy buns for these guys. They were about precision even in their follicles. Their appearance was a constant performance, a visual echo of their position in the feudal hierarchy, subtly reminding everyone of their importance. If medieval hairstyles were a whispered secret, then medieval jewelry absolutely shouted it from the rooftops, often with a hint of dramatic flair that would make any modern influencer blush. Beyond mere adornment, a piece of jewelry was a vibrant, sparkling, and often deeply symbolic language of power, wealth, faith, and occasionally, a desperate, superstitious plea for protection against everything from bad luck to inconvenient excommunication. While our peasant friends might have been lucky to own a crude iron ring, probably used more for opening ale barrels than for looking fashionable, or maybe as a last-ditch tool for self-defense against rogue chickens, the nobility and royalty bathed themselves in the literal glow of precious metals and glittering gems. The very foundation of their adornment was gold and silver, often intricately worked into delicate filigree, a kind of delicate wire lace that must have taken ages to master, or bold, commanding shapes. Pearls, shimmering with an almost ethereal glow, were not just beautiful. Imported from distant eastern lands at great expense, they symbolized purity, nobility, and sometimes, in a rather morbid turn, were associated with the tears of the Virgin Mary. So, you wore pearls to remind everyone you were pure, or deeply sorrowful, or both, depending on the occasion. But the real storytellers were the gemstones. Each individual stone wasn't just a pretty color. It carried a specific lore, a belief about its inherent powers and properties, making them far more than just sparkly bits of rock. It was less about carat weight and more about magical properties, making them a medieval Swiss army knife of spiritual and physical benefits. Asterisk rubies, with their fiery red glow, were more than just eye-catching. They symbolized passionate love, unwavering courage, and in some devout circles, even the very blood of Christ, believed to offer protection from harm. Imagine donning a ruby before a particularly unpleasant family gathering or a political debate. You'd feel absolutely invincible. Asterisk sapphires, in their deep, celestial blue, were the embodiment of truth, loyalty, and were thought to ward off evil. People believed sapphires could cure eye ailments, which, let's be honest, was a pretty useful superpower in an age of limited ophthalmology and pervasive dust, and banish wicked thoughts, effectively protecting the wearer from both internal corruption and external gossip. They were the original anti-bad vibes stone. Asterisk emeralds, with their lush green hues, represented hope, rebirth, and fertility. They were often believed to bring good fortune and harmony, especially in matters of the heart. Perfect for a medieval dating profile, perhaps, if you wanted to subtly hint at your excellent genetic stock and prospects for a bountiful harvest. Asterisk amethysts, the regal purple quartz, held a special place, particularly among the clergy. They symbolized spiritual clarity and, rather famously, were believed to ward off drunkenness. Yes, you heard that right. A monk wearing an amethyst could claim divine protection from hangovers, which, let's be frank, was a pretty good perk in an age of questionable sanitation and abundant, often weak, ale. Multitasking at its finest. The craftsmanship involved in these pieces was truly astounding. Medieval jewelers weren't just assembly line workers. They were master artists, employing techniques like intricate filigree, delicate wire work that must have tested their patience, granulation, applying tiny metal spheres to create texture, and especially enamel work. This involved fusing powdered glass onto metal, creating vivid, long-lasting colors that brought their designs to life. Each piece wasn't just jewelry. It was a miniature sculpture, a testament to countless hours of painstaking labor, embodying the lost knowledge and incredible skill of an era. They were tiny, wearable legacies, whispering tales of artistry and dedication. Now, let's dive into the practical, and often hilariously impractical specifics of how these gleaming treasures were integrated into the daily lives of the elite, beyond just sitting in a velvet box. Brooches and fibulae were the unsung heroes of medieval accessorizing. Sure, they fastened cloaks and tunics, but they also served as powerful personal statements. Adorned with intricate family crests, symbols of personal devotion, or even whimsical animal motifs, they were like wearing your entire LinkedIn profile, your family history, and your deepest beliefs all on one convenient pin. Imagine a knight, heading into battle, his family's fierce lion crest emblazoned on his shoulder via a massive, jeweled brooch that wasn't just for looks. It was a promise, a threat, a legacy all in one. It literally screamed, "I'm from the house of so-and-so, and we mean business, so don't even think about messing with my livestock or my family's honor." Rings. Oh, the rings. Beyond simple engagement rings, which, let's face it, have a fairly universal meaning that even medieval peasants probably understood, often formalized with a simple exchange of goods. Many rings served surprisingly practical, yet deeply symbolic purposes. Signet rings, for example, were not just fashionable. They were critical tools for authenticating documents. Carved with a unique family crest or personal symbol, they were pressed into hot wax to seal letters, legal papers, and official decrees, signifying the wearer's authority. A lord didn't just sign a document. He literally stamped his identity and power onto it. A clear sign that, "This is from me, and my word is law, so you better not question it, peasant, or my executioner will have a very sharp word with your neck." No need for a signature, just a satisfying thwack into the wax. Necklaces and collars were often heavy, elaborate chains of gold or silver, laden with an array of sparkling gemstones. Religious pendants, like crosses or images of saints, were incredibly common, worn not only as a display of wealth, but also as a constant reminder of one's piety and a plea for divine protection. It was like wearing your entire spiritual resume around your neck, hoping it would ward off both the plague and uncomfortable social interactions about your questionable lineage. And then there were the girdles. We moderns might think of a belt as purely functional, but for medieval nobility, a girdle was a serious fashion statement and a testament to their practicality. They were often intricately decorated with precious metals, jewels, and even tiny chains from which various personal items were suspended. A small, embroidered purse for coins, because who wants to keep their gold in a sock? A delicate eating knife, because you never knew when you'd need to carve up a roast, or a rival, or even the keys to the castle. It was the original designer fanny pack, but infinitely more stylish and, frankly, a lot less embarrassing than anything you'd see at a modern music festival. It proclaimed, "I'm rich, I'm prepared, and I might just have a tiny jewel-encrusted dagger ready if you cross me. Peasant, so tread carefully and perhaps offer me some of that fine ale." So, there you have it, my friends, the hidden language of medieval fashion. From the humble, practical hair covering of a peasant, smelling faintly of hay and honest labor, to the audacious, gravity-defying hennin of a queen, smelling vaguely of expensive perfume and crippling impracticality, and from the simple iron ring, probably used to scrape mud off boots, to the gleaming sapphire, every detail tells a story. These aren't just dusty artifacts in a museum. They're echoes of human lives, of ambitions, fears, and beliefs that, honestly, aren't so different from our own. We might not wear 3-foot hats to parties anymore, thank goodness for standard door frames, and the fact that most of us don't have to worry about accidentally knocking over a gargoyle with our headwear. But we still choose our clothes, our hairstyles, and our accessories to communicate who we are, where we belong, and what we value. It's a timeless human need, a silent conversation that transcends centuries. The very fabric of our being, our societal roles, and our personal aspirations are woven into the seemingly mundane choices we make about our appearance. Even if our biggest fashion dilemma now is deciding between ripped jeans and perfectly tailored trousers, the underlying drive to express ourselves remains constant. And when you look closely at these seemingly boring historical details, allowing your mind to slowly absorb their intricacies, you realize they're bursting with life, humor, and unexpected insights. They remind us that history isn't just a list of dates and dead kings. It's the living, breathing story of humanity, one meticulously styled braid, one gleaming gem, and one hilariously impractical hat at a time. It's about people just like us trying to navigate their world, define their place, and perhaps occasionally look utterly fabulous while doing it. As the subtle hum of the past fades into the quiet of your present, consider the stories these ancient styles tell. They are a testament to human ingenuity, vanity, and the enduring need to be seen, even if the world around you prefers a polite, well-dressed silence. May your own dreams be as rich and varied as the tapestries of the Middle Ages, and may your journey through the past leave you both wiser and, perhaps, a little more relaxed.